the Apocalypse.
Favorite remake.
I knew they were going to lose. I had a feeling you were going to say that. Well, that's just common sense. I saw this coming. I knew it was going to rain. How many times have you found that you've said something like this? You might be the kind of person to actually say it a lot. Well, if there's anything that science has shown, it turns out that you tend to edit your memory so you don't seem like such an imbecile when things happen that you couldn't have predicted. For example, when you learn things that you wish you had known all along, you just kind of claim that you did. A study at Yale University conducted an experiment with 50 kindergartners, 50 high school students, 50 grad school students, and 50 retired elderly people to see if age and upbringing had an impact on language learning. The experiment showed that kindergartners had the strongest aptitude for language learning, with learning aptitude starting to decline past the high school age. Now, I'm sure most of you are thinking, well, duh, you've kind of known this your whole entire life. Kids that grow up younger generally have better aptitude for learning languages. Well, Texas A&M also conducted a similar study showing, consisting of 200 random people with ages ranging 5 to 74 years old. But this time it was taught by people who became multilingual after the age of 25. And the results showed that age actually has nothing to do with language learning ability. In fact, it showed that high percentages of aptitude towards adults, since adults are better learners than children in general. Now, you're probably thinking, well, this seems pretty obvious too. What's going on here? So which one of these is true? Well, actually neither is. I made these studies up. They didn't happen. Welcome to the hindsight bias, also known as I knew it all along bias. It turns out that this is a common method that researchers use to prove the validity of the hindsight bias. But you don't need to fret because as humans, we all do this. Just remember what you might consider to be common sense is actually just hindsight bias. Another thing is, you may think that your opinions are actually a result of rational thought and objective analysis your entire life. But in reality, your opinions are a result of years of paying attention to only the information which confirmed what you already believed in, while you completely ignored the information that challenged your preconceived notions. This is known as confirmation bias. Political pundits have built an entire industry on confirmation bias. Rush Limbaugh, Keith Olbermann, Alex Jones, Bill O'Reilly, Arianna Huffington, Rachel Maddow, and Coulter. These people provide fuel for beliefs that pre-filter the world to match existing worldviews. In other words, if their filter is like your filter, you like them. But if their filter is not like your filter, you hate them. Whether pundits or not, or whether they're telling the truth or not, the point is that you watch pundits not because you want information, but because you want to be confirmed. Confirmation bias is basically seeing the world through a filter. In other words, in today's world, if you believe something is to be true, you can find evidence for it. I mean, just Google it. The Earth is flat, fake moon landing, chemtrails, and my favorite one of all, lizard people running the government. And as much as 12 million Americans actually believe this. Without confirmation bias, conspiracy theories would just completely fall apart. If you think that the government is evil, then everything the government does is evil. Between online videos, magazines, Facebook, Google, and cable news, it's easy to shape a worldview that you can be so confident in that nothing would dissuade you. And just remember, people don't want to hear new information. They want to hear what they've already known all along. And large cable news networks are willing to sell eyeballs to advertisers that are eager to listen to pundits that will confirm what they knew all along. Next, if I told you that ISIS is planning an undercover attack at O'Hare Airport, you would probably believe me or think that's pretty believable, because we constantly hear about terror attacks on the news networks. However, if I told you that porterhouse steaks cause anal cancer, you would be more skeptical because you don't know anyone who that happened to. Besides, steak is delicious. You're far more likely to believe something that is commonplace if you can find just one example of it. And you're far less likely to believe in something that you've never heard before. If the news started covering a shark attack, you'd be less likely to go to the beach, even though you're more likely to die from your dishwasher than a shark attack. It's easy to understand things with examples and stories as opposed to statistics and numbers, which is why the sciences and the maths are a lot more difficult than the creative outlets. Which, for example, let me ask you this, which wars have the highest death toll? Think about it for a second. You're probably thinking World War II, World War I, Vietnam. You might even think Korea, and maybe the Afghanistan war. Well, that would make sense. They're the most recent ones, and most likely the ones that will get the most mention. You'd be correct on World War II, on the highest death toll, but World War I only ranks number 9.
Civil War.
I bet you didn't think of the Mongol conquest, or the Taiping Rebellion, or guess the An Lushan Rebellion, or the Three Kingdoms War. Here's another one. Do more words begin with the letter R, or have R as the third letter? Think about it for a second. Rest, right, roam, raid, raccoon. You, like most people, probably think that more words begin with R than have the third letter as R. But in all honesty, you think that because thinking of words that start with the letter R is way more easier than thinking of words that just have R as the third letter. I'll present you one more thing. Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy were both presidents of the United States, elected 100 years apart. Both were shot and killed by assassins who were known by 3 names, with 15 letters: John Wilkes Booth and Lee Harvey Oswald. Neither killer would make it to trial. Pretty scary, huh? Wait, it gets even better. Lincoln had a secretary named Kennedy, and Kennedy had a secretary named Lincoln. They were both killed on a Friday while sitting next to their wives. Lincoln in the Ford Theater, and Kennedy in a Lincoln made by Ford. Lincoln sat in box number 9 at the Ford Theater, and Kennedy sat in the car number 7 in the motorcade. Both men were succeeded by a man named Johnson, Andrew for Lincoln and Lyndon for Kennedy. Andrew was born in 1808, and Lyndon was born in 1908. If you're shocked by the Lincoln and Kennedy connections, you, like most people, neglect to notice the differences, such as Kennedy was a Catholic, Lincoln was born a Baptist, Kennedy was killed with a rifle, and Lincoln with a pistol. Kennedy was shot in Texas, Lincoln in Washington, D.C., and Kennedy was born on May 29th, while Lincoln was born on February 12th. This is known as the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. You tend to ignore random chance when results seem meaningful, or when you want random events to have meaningful cause. For example, in World War II, Londoners noticed that when the bombings occurred, that the raids missed certain neighborhoods, and they began to think that German spies were living in the buildings that weren't being bombed. But psychologists Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman figured out that that's not true at all. The bombing raids were actually just random. Our brains are wired to create meaning and sense patterns, and it's how we hunted animals by understanding their patterns. It's how we map the stars in the night sky to navigate, and it's how we recognize friend from foe. But it's also the reason why you think that why the tornado didn't destroy the church, or why you see faces and pieces of buttered toast, or why you think it's cool that you share a birthday with Martin Scorsese, despite the fact you share a birthday with 19 million other people. I'd kind of like to end with a quote. It's by the late great physicist Richard Feynman during a commencement speech for Caltech in 1974. The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. Thank you, and stay home.
Thank you, David. That was a fantastic speech.
First I had somebody come by with a speech in hand, ready to go. So
Yes, very prepared. We learned a lot, and it was
I thought that was off
very
the top of his head. It's like this guy's a genius.
We can certainly apply those things to ourselves as Toastmasters and only remember our really good moments up here and forget all about any kind of misstep that we take. Next up,
sorry, the camera.
On that notepad.
we